And what is up, everybody? Right? Today, just finished watching latest episode of NWA Power. It's nice to see, the National Wrestling Alliance with its own show, as opposed to being the sanctioning body to someone else's show until that someone else decides we don't need the NWA anymore. We're just making up our own championship, right? It's kind of messed up when that happens, because then the NWA is left hanging, and that happened with ECW, that happened with TNA, and what winds up uh, it might have happened with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but probably not, because it was just Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona. But then the NWA just stays in Hollywood. But then again, with the studio wrestling, it's just staying in Atlanta right now. But right now, the big deal is Nick Aldis versus Marty Scurll. Marty Scurll, I never thought as a very good worker, but his character, the villain, is over like you wouldn't believe. It is so over with audiences, so over with fans. I love Marty Scurll as a character. He's great. Nick Aldis is. I'm shocked WWE hasn't didn't scoop him up a long time ago as Magnus when he was former TNA World Champion, and now as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He's actually helped bring the NWA title back to the prominence it once held before WWE, before WCW, before ECW, and definitely before. Uh, and I would even say it even holds more prestige now than it did with TNA, because when TNA finally got to a point where they were actually to the point where they were actually able to go off on their own, rather than bring the legitimacy of the NWA championship up with it, bring that legitimacy back, they just dropped it, which is messed up. But one thing that's they're supposed to fight at the Opera Cup, and the Opera Cup is happening in April, which means that Nick Aldis is going to be champion until April, because the stipulation is if Nick Aldis beats Marty Scurll, then Marty himself, out of his own pocket, has to refund everybody's money. It's a money back guarantee. So damn well that they're not going to have Marty Scurll pay everybody back. I don't know how much money that's going to be or anything like that, especially when they haven't even set a venue for a venue for the Crockett Cup. They just know that they're trying to get a bigger venue than the television studio that they are currently in. They need a bigger venue, and whatever the ticket prices for everybody is, there's no way in hell Marty Scurll's going to pay all that money back, even if he can. So eventually so at least until April, until Marty is going to be the NWA champion, because you've seen writing like this all the time. So it's pretty much a safe bet. But there's something that kind of bugs me, that about Marty Scurll. Something that he kept saying that he's never been world champion. That Nick Aldis has been world champion, like before he was NWA world champion, he was the TNA world champion. Okay, understand. Okay, understandable. That's fine. But what about the Defiant Championship? Uh, when I got into it with Guinness World Records, when I got into it with Guinness World Records about them saying that Holly Holm was the first professional combat sports athlete to win world championships in both boxing and mixed martial arts, I was like, no, Butterbean was. And they said, oh, but the title he won was a regional championship. Therefore, it doesn't count as a world record. Okay, fine. Apparently, their definition of a world championship is a championship that is contested for over international waters. Okay. The Ring of Honor World Championship was not a world championship till Samoa Joe defended it in England. The Ring of Honor World Television Championship was not a official world championship until it was defended internationally. The Chikara Grand Championship has been contested for internationally. Combat Zone Wrestling's Championship has been contested for internationally. You know what hasn't been contested for internationally? The Major League Wrestling's World Championship. I don't understand how that works, but it's still called the world title, despite the fact that it's never been contested for outside the lower 48 United States. AEW is not a legitimate world championship. Granted, a former world champion, a former multiple-time world champion, has, currently holds that title right now, but that championship has not been contested for outside the lower 48 United States. Even when, and this was such a mistake on AEW and Chris Jericho's part. When Chris Jericho, just fought in this past Wrestle Kingdom 14 against Hiroshi Tanahashi, and he said, if you beat me, then he's like, you could get a shot at the AEW World Championship. But if you were he was already booked to win. Why didn't they just why couldn't they just put the championship on the line instead of, this is for a future title shot? Because you knew that Tanahashi was not going to be booking to win it, especially when they just started the feud between Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley, former CZW champion. CZW championship has been contested for internationally. The Chikara Grand Championship has been contested for internationally. Two titles that Eddie Kingston has won. But Eddie Kingston is in the NWA right now, talking about having never been a world champion. But his partner, Homicide, has been, because Homicide held the Ring of Honor World Championship for I don't know how long, but he was Ring of Honor World Champion. And Ring of Honor is considered a world title. I don't know what it is. I guess it's because it's not one of the major titles. Because like I said, they counted Marty was counting TNA's championship, which is a legitimate world title. Marty was Defiant champion when it was originally What Culture Pro Wrestling. Even that championship had been contested for internationally. They've had, there's several championships and promotions within the United States that have been contested for internationally. They've crossed over international waters, not just South America. I'm talking about like in Europe and in Asia. not that the promotion has gone out there, but maybe the promotion worked out something with a promotion on the other side, saying, okay, we're going to put the championship on the line. Your guy is not going to beat our guy, but he's going to put the championship on the line. Okay, great. And then maybe, okay, your guy could come over here, this, that, and the other, fight for it, and he could win it. And then he'll even take the belt back to you guys, and defend it once or twice, but eventually it's got to come back to us. Okay, all right, great. And that's what gives the championship, the world championship, its world credibility. And AEW didn't do that. Major League Wrestling hasn't done that, but they're calling the AEW championship a world championship. Defiant Pro Wrestling, they just changed the name from What Culture Pro Wrestling to Defiant. Marty was What Culture Pro Wrestling champion when it changed over to Defiant. And Austin Aries, who held the TNA championship, who held the Ring of Honor championship, beat him for that, and beats Marty Scurll for the Defiant championship, but they don't call it a world title. Then on top of that, I don't understand how is it that WWE has their United States Championship, their Intercontinental Championships, but as often as those are contested for overseas, they're not considered world titles. Even when New Japan started bringing their shows over to the United States, which was great for a lot of American fans, why is the IWGP United States Championship defended mostly in Japan? Their Intercontinental Championship should be between two continents that are touching, so that would be between Europe and Asia, and it's been contested for within the United States. How does that work? And then on top of that, Ring of Honor's World Television title has been contested for, and Marty Scurll was World Television Champion. On top of that, he was IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. That's not considered a world title. It's a lighter weight class. Don't get me. I understand, but the whole purpose of having having a lighter weight class is so that you have having that title, so that you have a champion within that weight class. I don't understand it. I've asked Dave Knows Wrestling, it's like, how many legitimate World Wrestling Championships are there in the world right now? Because as many times as I've gone over the history of, the history of the NWA, eventually then Capital Wrestling Corporation, starting the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, then Jim Crockett Promotions, turning into World Championship Wrestling, and Eastern Championship Wrestling becoming Extreme Championship Wrestling, then Total Nonstop Action, NWA Total Nonstop Action turning into straight TNA, then now Impact Wrestling. But then Ring of Honor didn't have that. That's a legitimate world title. But then, like I said, CZW has been contested. That championship has been contested for internationally, and it doesn't count. It doesn't count as a world title. Eddie Kingston had that one, as well as the Chikara Grand Championship. In fact, I believe he's still the longest reigning Chikara Grand Champion, and yet he was fighting Kevin Steen for the Ring of Honor world title, acting as if he was not a world champion, despite the fact that by that time, I'm pretty sure for as long as he held it, Chikara has had it contested for it's been contested for internationally, but he acted like he was never a world champion. And especially combat zone, the combat zone wrestling, that title had been contested for internationally before Eddie Kingston ever got it. But he doesn't, they don't consider that world titles. Why is that? Those have been contested for internationally. They are genuine, legitimate world championships, yet they're not considered that. But Major League Wrestling, which has never competed out, which has never had a show, it's never been contested for outside the lower 48 United States. They did one show in Mexico. And they did one show in Mexico. That's it. And the world title was not up for grabs. So I don't understand how that's considered a world championship. The AEW's world championship, the time that they should have put it up for grabs to further legitimize it as a world champion, as a world championship title. Freaking for Chris Jericho, like I said, multiple time world champion prior to go up against Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is multiple time world champion. This would have just further legitimized the AEW title. In fact, I disagree with David Lee from Dave Knows Wrestling, because he tried to say that it would have been better if he would have preferred if Kenny Omega became AEW's first world champion. And no, because Kenny Omega, when he was a DDT's champion before it had been contested for internationally. So that did not count as a world title. And he only held the IWGP Championship one time. However, he's currently the AAA Mega Champion. But it's like outside of Mexico and a few places in the United States, I don't think it's ever, where else has it been contested for? I mean, did AAA take their whole show to... But then again, AAA works with a lot of Japanese wrestlers, and I'm pretty sure they send a lot of their wrestlers over to Japan, whether it be New Japan, or whether it be Pro Wrestling Noah, whether it be All Japan Pro Wrestling, and those three are the top three wrestling promotions in Japan right now, and you have the All Japan Triple Crown. You have the Global Honor Crown Heavyweight Championship and the International Grand Prix Heavyweight Championship. All considered world titles. And I don't think the Global Honor Crown has ever, I've no recollection of the Global Honor Crown having ever left Japan. Same thing with the All Japan Pro Wrestling Triple Crown. But granted, it was like three different world titles. It was three different world. It wasn't even world championships. It was three different championships meshed together, and one of them was NWA, and it definitely wasn't the NWA world title. So, what class? I mean, seriously, what classifies now as a world title? Since apparently, a title being contested for over international waters doesn't means it's not a world title for whatever reason. Yet these other championships that have not been contested for outside of the United States are considered world championships. I don't get it. If somebody could please come up with some kind of list of all the actual legitimate world championships there are. And that's something else I don't understand. Like, why is it? It's like, because, just because if I win a championship here, right? I win a championship here I fight for it here. I defend it here. And this could be a championship that I came up with, okay? I invent a championship. I compete for it. I win, and I never leave where I'm at. Does that mean people from Canada, people from Mexico, from any of the countries in South America, from anywhere in Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, does that mean because I contest for it here that nobody from anywhere else in the world isn't allowed to come over here and meet me and fight for it? That doesn't make any sense. If somebody could please please let me know exactly what it is that constitutes as a professional wrestling world championship. And I'm looking, I like what, and I normally only get wrestling pay-per-views now if I know history is about to be made. I just watched, history was about to be made with New Japan Pro Wrestling with the first ever double IWGP, the IWGP double champion, Tetsuya Naito. Congratulations to, the ungovernable one, or All In, because that's the first time anything like that had ever happened. So I didn't want to miss it. Or Super Card of Honor, where Ring of Honor and New Japan sold out Madison Square Garden, something that they said couldn't be done. So for the first time in Madison, the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and the Ring of Honor World Championship were contested for in Madison Square Garden. That was history making when they brought back the Crockett Cup. That was history being made. NWA Hard Times crowning the first ever NWA television champion since I don't know, friggin' since everything changed over to WCW. So I'm probably not going to get this next Crockett Cup, but I want to congratulate Marty Scurll ahead of time, because clearly they're not going to have him, refund everybody's money. There's no way in hell that's going to happen. And like even if he was cool with it, even if he was cool with having to pay, those, God knows how many tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars he has to pay back if they get a big enough venue, But how many legitimate primary championship world champions are there? Not world tag team championships, not junior weight classes, not a secondary title like the world television title that was, that is a world television title. It is a world title, but it is still just the secondary title. We're talking about primary world championships in the world today. Not, back in the 90s or anything like that. Not, it was formerly known as this, then it was all this. No, how many legitimate world championships are there within pro wrestling in the world today? Anybody knows the answer to that question, please post up a video, because nobody knows how many there are. Everybody's freaking lost in this. I'm done talking. You guys have a good night.